The New Orleans Saints look to be signaling their hierarchy at quarterback. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, Kellen Moore wants more scrimmage action, and we'll see some more before the preseason game on Sunday. The Saints rookie running back Devin Neal is set to miss a couple of weeks. What does that mean for the rest of the running back room? Well, it means really good things for Kendre Miller, that's for certain. And we'll kick everything off with the quarterback battle because it looks like the hierarchy is starting to set in. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It looks very much like the New Orleans Saints are starting to narrow their quarterback battle down to their top two front runners, Spencer Rattler, as well as Tyler Shough. We can now kind of start to glean this, and look, maybe I'm reading too much into things, but I've got three things that have stood out to me from the last, let's say, 2 days that kind of give us this indication. The first of which was the scrimmage. We broke down all the scrimmage numbers just a couple days ago. Spencer Rattler seeing 5 different drives with the first team offense. All 6 of his drives were against the first team defense. Tyler Shough seeing just 2 of his drives with the first team offense, none of his drives against the first team defense. And then Jake Haener, no drives with the first team offense, 1 drive against the first team defense. That felt like that was an early statement in terms of the way that the Saints kind of see things panning out. Now, hear me when I say this. When I'm discussing this, I'm kind of just talking about preseason week 1, because depending upon how things go throughout the preseason, practices, all that, the week 1 regular season decision might not be made for a couple of games. It might not be made until right after that Los Angeles Chargers game, depending upon how these quarterbacks perform. So really what we're discussing here is the hierarchy for the first time these guys hit the field and see action this upcoming Sunday up against the Los Angeles Chargers. But that felt like that was already the beginning of a little bit of game prep for Spencer Rattler, and then a little bit of game prep for Tyler Shough, who would still see, I imagine, a large portion of the snaps on Sunday, even if he wasn't the first quarterback up on the field. The second thing was, after a day off on Monday, when we got back to practice on Tuesday, the Saints did not continue the rotation the way that they had been continuing the rotation. For the first few practices, it was Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, Jake Haener. Then you saw kind of the walkthrough break things up a little bit, but then it went Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, Spencer Rattler, and then it went back on Tuesday to Spencer Rattler again. And so for me, that was, again, a little bit more of a signifier. What we saw on Tuesday, Spencer Rattler with the first team to start things off, Tyler Shough with the second team to start things off, and then when the Saints went split field on drills, they swapped Tyler Shough over to the first team and then swapped Spencer Rattler over to the second team, which makes sense because you're going to see a bunch of those different guys all kind of mixed together when it comes to the preseason matchup up against the Los Angeles Chargers. There's no reason to see Eric McCoy on the field. There's no reason to see, Alvin Kamara on the field. There's no reason to see certain players on the field. And you might see some of them. I highly doubt you're going to see Alvin Kamara, of course. And I think we kind of got that confirmed a little bit by Kellen Moore on Tuesday. But I do think that the continuation of Spencer Rattler with the first team, Tyler Shough with the second team, Jake Haener with the third team, who then didn't take reps with either the first or second team at the end of practice and hung around and said to do the developmental reps after practice was done. It shows you that the hierarchy is starting to kind of narrow things down a little bit to Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough, with Spencer Rattler in the lead. He continues to be the focus when it comes to first team reps. He's got a 71.8% completion percentage by my past charting so far, while Tyler Shough has a 60% completion percentage. Just for comparison's sake as well, Jake Haener at 68.9%. So you're seeing a big separation there. And now you're seeing all the separation with these reps with the first team as well. One other thing that just happened before we went live here is that the Saints released their unofficial depth chart. Now, we have to really, really stress the unofficial part of the unofficial depth chart. It was interesting, and we kind of expected this, that it was listed for quarterback Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shough or Jake Haener. And so that's not super surprising to see them not announce a starter. You've got 2 more days of practice on Thursday and Friday before you head into that game on Sunday. There's no need to really get ahead of yourself here. There's still some information gathering to be done. I get that 100%. But here's the thing that was really interesting is the order of that. See, these unofficial depth charts are typically ordered, and we're going to dive into the rest of the unofficial depth chart in tomorrow's episode, by the way, where we'll take a look at some of the things that are interesting on defense, specifically interesting at running back as well. But when it comes to these quarterbacks, and we'll revisit this a little bit tomorrow as well, but the order of those quarterbacks is so intriguing. Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, Jake Haener, typically speaking, these unofficial depth charts are laden with orders of seniority. And so what you're really looking for is where does the team deviate from that, right? And so you'll see at wide receiver, the guys that are the veteran guys were up first and then so on and so forth. You saw that in the secondary as well. That's not the defensive line with one exception. Offensive line, that's typically speaking the situation to where your starters are either your starters or you end up having, after that, a seniority line or order, or sometimes your starters where you don't necessarily have a starter in place yet will follow a seniority pattern. That did not happen with these quarterbacks. Spencer Rattler was ahead of Tyler Shough, who's got 2 years of experience over 1 year of experience. That makes sense. However, Tyler Shough being ahead of Jake Haener, very interesting, right? Because it wasn't just a part of the, hey, they're doing this by seniority kind of usual situation. This is another example to me of this team clearly culling down a little bit of this conversation between the starting quarterback to being a 2-man race between Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough, as we believed it has been from the very beginning. But the Saints gave Jake Haener opportunities. They gave him first team reps. They've continuously made sure that he's a part of the rotation. They moved on from Hunter Deckers. They even got rid of the competition for third quarterback on the roster, all of that. So I think that was another signifier of a little bit of that hierarchy starting to settle in that showed you, hey, this is where the battle really is. It's between Spencer Rattler. It's between Tyler Shough. For us, that's not a surprise, but to see the Saints kind of in their own way, potentially acknowledging it a little bit, that's where the news, quote unquote, really comes in from it. But I do think that when you look at this quarterback hierarchy thus far, it still very much feels, as we've been saying over the course of the past few days, that Tyler Shough has made a really, really nice push over the course of the last few days. I would say that his last few practices have been amongst his best. Tuesday was a little bit sluggish for him. 5 of 11, 5 of 12. There was a sack that they played through and he threw the football away. So you can count that as an attempt or not count that as an attempt. It doesn't really factor in, but 5 of 11 or 5 of 12 with an interception that he also threw on Tuesday, where he sailed to pass over Chris Olave and Jordan Howden was able to sneak around to go ahead and get the interception there. All of those pieces end up, kind of showing you a little bit more of kind of where things stand. And so it wasn't the strongest day for Tyler Shough on Tuesday, but he has made a push recently, but I don't think it's enough to really narrow the gap just yet between he and Spencer Rattler. So I think if you're looking at the hierarchy, it's still very much Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, and Jake Haener going into this first preseason game. But let's wait and see how Thursday and Friday's practices, as well as, of course, the preseason game, either confirm or change things for the New Orleans Saints, if that is indeed the path that they are headed down. All right, coming up next, the New Orleans Saints are going to be without running back Devin Neal for a couple of weeks, according to Kellen Moore. We want to take a look at the injuries so far for New Orleans and take a look at what that means for the running back room as well, because it means some really good things for Kendre Miller, who should see a lot of opportunities on Sunday. We got all that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Yahoo Fantasy is the only place you need to be going to play some fantasy football. All the best are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should be too, whether you're a first-timer or you're a veteran making your millionth league. It's excellent. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they've dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football over on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now is absolutely the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. And if you're into more of the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league as well. So stay tuned for more killer announcements and start a Yahoo Fantasy Football League now over at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, family. The New Orleans Saints haven't got a lot of bad injury news so far this offseason, but you got something new here today on Tuesday. So the most significant injury that we have seen so far is a knee injury, or reported knee injury, that is sending, or has already sent rather, offensive lineman Nick Saldiveri to injured reserve. That could be it for him when it comes to his time in New Orleans. It certainly ends his season, but I think that probably Nick Saldiveri and the Saints are going to be headed separate directions if he comes back to football after this season. But now you get the second most significant injury, which is a weeks-long hamstring injury for running back Devin Neal. Now, the young rookie played in 50 of 51 or 49 of 50 games during his collegiate career over at Kansas. And the only game that he missed was his final bowl game, where he opted out in order to get ready for the NFL draft. So him being injured is kind of new for him in his history. Now, this is what happened to Kendre Miller too. Kendre Miller didn't have a lot of injuries during college, but then he had that meniscus injury coming in, then he had a hamstring injury, and then things just kind of derailed for him. So obviously you're hoping that that's not going to be the case for Devin Neal. I wouldn't expect that to be the case for Devin Neal, and I would expect the Saints to take this very carefully. They invested in him this offseason. Yes, he was a 6th-round draft pick, but he's a guy that they think of very highly, and he's somebody that serves as a pretty good complement to the style of running that Kellen Moore likes to implement in his offense. And he's also a really solid complement to the style of rushing that a guy like Alvin Kamara ends up bringing to this team as well, where Alvin Kamara can be a little bit more of the out in space scat back. You have a guy like Devin Neal who can run in between the tackles, be that one-cut explosive running back, just like he was over in Kansas. 16 rushing touchdowns in each of the last 2 years, over 1,000 rushing yards in each of the last 3 seasons. He was an electrifying player at Kansas, and you're hoping that he's going to be able to bring some level of that in the transition from college to the pros. But that's now going to be delayed a little bit. And this has a bit of a ripple effect for the New Orleans Saints, because with him being out for a couple of weeks, according to Kellen Moore, that means that he could potentially miss 2 of the 3 preseason games, right? I'm taking a couple as literally 2 in that case. If it does mean literally 2, then he could miss 2 of the 3 preseason games, plus some additional time before that 3rd preseason game, and not get the opportunity to showcase what it is that he could do as he vies for a roster spot. I don't know, though, that would keep him from getting a roster spot, if I'm being completely honest. The Saints are very high on him. Coach JT, Joel Thomas, who's also not only the running backs coach, but the associate head coach as well. He's super high on him. Kellen Moore is super high on him as well. So we'll see where things go for him. But ideally, Devin Neal gets back out on the field either by that 2nd preseason game, or certainly by that 3rd preseason game, to go out there and fight for and vie for an opportunity to get a roster spot. Though I wouldn't be completely surprised if he still got a roster spot, even if he didn't play in the preseason. We saw that happen with Mason Tipton last year, where the Saints were super high on the undrafted free agent wide receiver out of Yale. But here's what this does in terms of an opportunity that it does grant, is that it kind of leaves Kendre Miller in a class of his own. Maybe him and Cam Akers being the 2 between the tackles runners that are a little bit more focused as running backs. A guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire has already said himself that he can run between the tackles. He did it well during his time with the Kansas City Chiefs, but they're also looking at lining him up and utilizing his ability, splitting him out, utilizing what his capabilities are as a pass catcher, as a receiver, all of those things. So this really kind of leaves Kendre Miller as well as Cam Akers as kind of the thumping bruiser potential players in between the tackles. And so Kendre Miller, who has been healthy, has been on the field, has been producing, has looked good, and has consistently been a part of practice, has gotten his opportunities with the 1st and 2nd team offense as a running back. and is now in a system that is a little bit more akin to what he did over at TCU, running in between the tackles, running inside zone, not necessarily being in the wide zone offense that didn't put him in position to really play his best football, play up to his strengths last year, with 69.8% of those rushes going outside the tackles when his game was very much inside the tackles. And so I think those are all things that you look at and say, okay, now Kendre Miller has a real opportunity going into these preseason games to really get the bulk of carries. And so him, Cam Akers, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Velus Jones Jr., and Marcus Yarns all of a sudden become big focuses in this rushing attack, where you're probably not going to see Alvin Kamara during the preseason, or at least early on in the preseason. Now that you're not going to see Devin Neal, at least for this game on Sunday. So now all of a sudden the door is wide open for a guy like Kendre Miller to not just get opportunities, but impress with those opportunities. This is a guy that is looking for the chance to be able to prove people wrong, show that he can stay healthy, and show that he can have a larger, more kind of focused, more kind of bigger contributing role in this offense, and now should have the runway to be able to maybe kind of display some of that going into the preseason. So Kendre Miller's preseason changed out of 25 into 5, said, I don't want that number anymore. I was hurting that number. I need a new start. Switched over to 5. Now he gets a even fresher opportunity going into this first preseason game with Devin Neal sidelined with injury. So definitely something that we'll be watching as that Saints run game hierarchy. We talked about the quarterback hierarchy, but the running back hierarchy has not been clear so far here throughout training camp. We see a lot of guys with first team, second team. We see a lot of guys with second team, third team. And honestly, we've seen a lot more passing over the course of training camp than we have seen rushing over the course of training camp. So I think that that's something that we're looking forward to see change, getting into more game situations when it comes to the preseason games, which will follow a little bit more of a natural game flow. So when it comes to injuries so far, New Orleans is actually handling itself pretty well. JT Gray returned to the field on Tuesday after missing a couple of practices with a hamstring injury. Devin Neal is going to be out with his hamstring injury for a couple of weeks. Nick Saldiveri's season is over on injured reserve. And Moochie Dixon's dealing with a not so serious shoulder injury, while Juwan Johnson continues to kind of take his time getting back after a not so serious groin injury. He was on the field Sunday during the scrimmage, caught some passes, caught a tough pass over the middle as well, and then kind of had an easy day, a lighter day on Tuesday, as did a lot of veteran players. And so really compare that to last year, where every single day I was coming on this show talking about this player left early with an injury, this player left early with an injury, this player is going to be gone for a couple of days, this player is going to be gone for a couple of weeks. And then even Kendre Miller himself, who suffered that, had a hamstring injury the very first day of training camp. And then we didn't see him until 4 games into the regular season, because he had to start the season on injured reserve after not participating in training camp at all, and then not coming back until partway through the season. We have seen some really good progress for the Saints in this category. And you know what? There's already been injuries. Things have already happened. So there's no voodoo or juju to kind of, turn things in the wrong direction here. This is what the Saints have done up to this point through 11 practices. Like last year, they went through 11 practices and had at least 11 guys leave practices as well. You didn't see that here throughout this opening portion of training camp. And regardless of what happens moving forward, that is a really, really good achievement for a team that stayed hurt over the course of the past few years. All right, coming up next, Kellen Moore wants more scrimmages, and some young players get an opportunity on Tuesday, and they impress in the meanwhile. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. I use Monarch Money like crazy because you would like for it to be easy to manage all of your finances, and sometimes it never is. That is until you download Monarch Money, because they're going to put all of those financial management systems that you need, whether it's managing your investments, your budgeting, your spending, your accounts, whatever it is that you need, you're going to be able to put it all in one place over at Monarch Money. I went from having like 6 or 7 different apps to just having 2 apps so far, and it has been awesome so far what you can get with Monarch Money. If you're trying to set a financial goal like I've been, you want to make sure that you're trying to meet that. You can do that and you can track it all along the way with Monarch Money. Build a plan, stick to the plan with a little bit of help from a friend that's like a little CEO on your phone. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Kellen Moore wants more scrimmage. He wants more scrimmage. Of course, this was a situation here where Kellen Moore brought this team out on Sunday and ran sort of these scrimmage scenarios. They ran 126 plays over the course of 18 total drives during that scrimmage, the most I've ever seen in a scrimmage, the most I've ever seen the Saints ever scrimmage. They even went live tackling at one point towards the end of practice with the third and second teams to make sure that these guys who are going to be really getting a lot of reps over the course of the preseason are not getting hit or hitting for the first time in those preseason games and instead get a little bit of that under their belt. Well, it might not be finished. Kellen Moore said that on Friday, the second practice, so the Saints will take Wednesday off, travel to California, get settled in. Thursday, they will begin practices in California. And then Friday, they're going to go through what Kellen Moore said was going to be a scrimmage-like practice. And he did confirm that they will not run 126 plays again. So we won't be seeing that again. But there is something to this idea that the Saints continue and Kellen Moore continues to do the thing that I said is winning over the hearts of a lot of players and winning over that building, winning over that roster, which is that he lets his football players play football. As rudimentary as it sounds, it's continued to be the winning sort of formula for Kellen Moore, putting them in situations where instead of playing a lot of those or doing a lot of those scripted plays where they offense knows what they're doing, defense knows what they're doing it in this situation, they're doing it in this order, all that. Instead of doing that, they're going into more of these call it sequences, game-like situations, game-like simulations for the team as well. And I think that's been a big thing that has been really beneficial for players, first of all, because it's allowed them to be able to play like they're playing football, not like they're practicing. And there's a clear difference between those two things. But also it just gets things a little bit under the belt for not just the players, but for the coaches as well, who are calling plays, right? Calling 126 plays over the course of a practice by Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley, that is not an easy thing to do. That's 2 games worth of play calling there. And so that's a lot that's going on. And so I think that that's another place where this ends up having a major benefit. So the team will pack up. They'll head to California. While in California at UC Irvine, Zot, my alma mater, they'll continue to kind of find opportunities for these scrimmage drills and continue to kind of build off that. I think that's going to have more bearing on the quarterback competition. It's going to have more bearing on the preseason quarterback rotation. Like there's still so much unknown at that quarterback spot that I would not be shocked if these practices still are ones that are part of the information gathering in terms of solving whatever that it's not a problem, but in terms of, making that selection, making that pick is going to be and is going to include in terms of, criteria, all this other stuff. On Tuesday, we saw some young players get their opportunity to rotate in with the first team. And this is kind of one of the first times we've gotten to see this. Eric McCoy took some snaps off. Will Clapp went in at center. Julian Blackman took some snaps off. I'm sorry, my apologies. Julian Blackman did not. Justin Reed took some snaps off at safety, and Jordan Howden stepped in with the first team. Quincy Riley got some first team reps as Kool-Aid McKinstry got a little bit of cool down. And so, there are some of these players that just, cutting into the preseason, you probably don't need to see much from. And instead you'd like to see them, kind of stashed away, wrapped up in bubble wrap, and then saved for the beginning of the season. We've seen the Saints already take this approach with a few veterans here throughout training camp. Cam Jordan, Brandon Cooks, Demario Davis, who haven't had excessive workloads here throughout camp. Keeping them healthy and keeping them on the field for week 1 is the priority. They already know what they're doing, so on and so forth. And so the player that I think really kind of carpe diemed, if you will, seized the day, is Jordan Howden. I thought that Jordan Howden, who had that interception on that overthrow by Tyler Shough, really wasn't an over there, just kind of sailed on him. But in any case, like as a safety over the top, you have to go and get that pass. You have to be opportunistic when those happen. And to me, that play was a really good example of why eyes on the quarterback has so much value in an NFL defense. And this was a pretty big shift for New Orleans when it comes to their defensive system. They're not playing a lot of press man and turning their back to the defense and turning their back to the quarterback rather, and running with the wide receivers. They are, taking up zones. They're switching off. They're maybe clamping on to, man coverage when somebody comes through their zone, but there's still a lot of eyes on the quarterback for the opening portion of a play before all the routes start to distribute and receivers start to move out of their breaks. This is something that you're going to see as an opportunity then to be able to go out there and attack the football. Jordan Howden talked about this during mini camps and OTAs immediately as something that stood out to him about Brandon Staley's defense. He spoke about it again when we spoke to him earlier this week at the Saints facility for his media availability following a training camp practice. Ugo Amadi spoke about it on Tuesday. And so I think we're seeing already the kind of benefits of that, the fruits of that labor, right? Having the eyes in the backfield. And so he did a really good job being able to then take advantage of that pass that sailed over the top of Chris Olave by being able to go and make a play on it, because he could see how things were developing. He could see where Tyler Shough's eyes were going. He could see where the ball was, and that he had, the angle on that trajectory, all of that. So that's a little bit of that benefit of the Brandon Staley defense. A couple plays before that, he also had a pass breakup as well. So he had a pretty strong practice. I would say that it was Jordan Howden's strongest practice that I've seen from him in his pro career. I still think Julian Blackmon is well ahead in the conversation when it comes down to who's taking safety reps next to Justin Reid. And bear in mind, Jordan Howden was in place of Justin Reid, because Justin Reid's a guy you probably don't have to see during the preseason. You know what it is that he's doing and how he contributes. And so I think that that's something you'll see from, Jordan Howden when he gets his opportunities as a dime back and things like that. Can he take advantage of and be opportunistic when, small mistakes, quote unquote, like that happen, and you have the opportunity to go out there and pounce and make a play on it. And so I thought that was a really good showing by Jordan Howden. A couple other little updates for you here. Oh, kicker. So we've now seen 27 kicks from Charlie Smith, and Charlie Smith went 3 of 5 today with misses from extra point distance as well as 51-ish yards. Sorry, the angle was a little weird, but I think it was 51. And so now so far in camp, he is 16 of 27, while Blake Grupe is 26 of 27. And so that gives you a pretty good indication of where this thing stands. This never felt like a competition. As for punter, really interesting kind of spilling the beans, letting the cat out of the bag, if you will, by Zach Wood, who said that one of the 3 punters, Matthew Hayball, Ty Kroger, and James James Burnip, one of the 3 won't be making the trip to California. And he kind of let the cat out of the bag on that one, thinking that it was spoken about already. And so we'll wait and see which one it is that ends up, being that player, but definitely something to watch, because then that opens up a roster spot. Who do you go and get when you're out with that roster spot, right? I mean, we've heard some stuff about the Saints being interested in trying to pursue Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen was in Los Angeles. There was some, visiting with the Chargers. There was some mutual interest between the two. Does that get done? Does that not get done? Is he still in Los Angeles? And can the Saints entice him down to Irvine for a little visit to practice or something? Like, I don't know. Maybe that's not the route that they go at all. But if you're going to end up opening up that roster spot, there's going to be a corresponding move to fill up that roster spot. So it becomes super intriguing how the Saints might end up following up beyond that expected move now at this point. All right, coming up in tomorrow's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Saints unofficial depth chart. It is unofficial, but I'll tell you, there are some intriguing things there. We'll revisit the quarterback conversation that we have, but I also think that we have a little bit of a leap for a newcomer over on the defensive side who is going to be a starter in 2025. So we'll have that coming up for you tomorrow. You can find us on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, and of course at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Make sure you come through. Don't forget to go and check out Locked On Pelicans, Locked On LSU, Locked On SEC as well, and go and show some love to all of our favorite shows here over at the Locked On Podcast Network. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.